Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have with me the Secretary of Health, Kim Malzum-Risden, and we are here to answer any questions you may have. Go ahead.
Joseph with the Capital Journal. Ma'am, I was wondering if either of you could, and I'm sorry, but can either of you comment, today was the first death of somebody under the age of 40 and they didn't have underlying medical conditions. I mean, yes, it's of course, it's bound to happen, law, statistics, all the other, but can you comment on it for me, pretty please?
Well, I think the situation is that there's still a lot about this virus we don't know, and that it is unpredictable. And so we've seen the virus change since it was first detected in China. We've seen different strains of it. We're still learning to understand how transmittable it is. The CDC just updated its guidance on close contacts today, where they're defining a close contact as somebody who's been within 6 feet of a person for 15 minutes. And so that's a lot longer than what we had been working with before. So I think what we're seeing is just the unpredictability ability of the virus and the need to stay vigilant and continuing to do what we're doing with testing and isolation if you're positive and good social distancing.
Quick follow-up on that is I mean, I guess this is still new, but is the application going to be updated from 5 to 15, or are you guys going to run with the 5?
So we will be using the updated CDC guidance, and so we've changed as that has changed. And so as we're interviewing people, we will be looking to anybody that they've been in contact with for at least 15 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Bob?
JP from...
I'm going to go to Bob in the room, and then I'll take the question on the call.
My question is about Pennington County and the shooting victim there. Is that person's death well, can you talk about that?
I can answer a question around how COVID deaths are recorded. And so if a person dies for a reason outside of COVID but still has COVID, it is not considered a COVID-related death. And so that has been a question that we've had and have answered, and that's, again, consistent with the guidelines that CDC has put out. Certainly, if there's an exposure in a situation like that, we would encourage folks that were potentially exposed to monitor symptoms, get tested if they show any symptoms, and follow the guidance that we have out there for anybody else.
Just to be clear then. I think I've got the answer.
Good? Okay.
Was there a question on the phone?
Yes, JP from KRN News Radio.
Okay, go ahead, JP.
Thank you, Governor. Have you received any response yet to the information that you've sent to the White House, Department of Justice, Interior, and Congressional delegation revolving the checkpoint issue?
They have received the information and acknowledged that. That is all the communication that we've gotten so far.
Thank you.
Governor Megan Mraz, News Center 1.
Yes, go ahead, Megan.
You asked to order an investigation into the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe checkpoints per your letter to the White House. Was there a similar investigation ordered into the Oglala Sioux Tribe, and did that yield any affidavits or videos that you also intend to send to the White House, DOJ, et cetera?
All of the tribes that are running checkpoints are a part of the investigation.
Has anything been investigated or communicated with the Oglala Sioux Tribe?
Yes, all tribes that are running checkpoints are a part of the investigation and will continue to be so.
Then a follow-up, why has that not been mentioned in a letter to the White House or anything else on the sc.covid website?
It's continuing to be a part of the investigation going forward.
Jackie Hendry, SDPB.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm wondering if you can tell us if you're aware of any, as we're coming up on Memorial Day weekend, if you're aware of any Memorial Day I guess, presentations or programs or anything like that dedicated to people who have specifically died of COVID, or alternatively, if you can talk about suggestions for how people can celebrate safely this weekend.
Sure. I do not know of any specific celebrations that are being held for those that we've lost to COVID-19 in the state of South Dakota. I do know there are many communities that are planning events, and most of them are doing it in a responsible manner, considering the virus and its spread across our state. Some are social distancing in their vehicles at parks or at veterans memorials. Some are limiting the amount of people that can come in, and some are live streaming them as well. So I appreciate all these communities doing what they can to protect folks, and so many times, as it is with Memorial Day, we're focusing on people that have been lost, specifically those that have been lost in defense of our country's freedoms and liberties. But I know that for me personally, and for many people that I know, they also reflect on other folks in their lives that they've lost, and share memories and times that they spent with them.
This is Ariel with the Journal.
Sure, Ariel, go ahead.
Hi, so this is not about coronavirus, but you said you would update us after the conversation with the families in the Hideaway Hills community, and I believe that happened today. So could you please share what questions and concerns you heard and what you were able to tell the community members?
Yes, we had a great conversation with the community members in that district that are facing the challenge of having that old mine being discovered under their homes. I would say most of them were extremely concerned about their own safety and that of their families. They want to know the extent of that mine underneath the neighborhood and are looking for a professional firm, an engineering firm that can come in and safely assess it to know really what the risks are and how they can proceed forward. There are several families that are out of their homes, and so they're concerned about losing the value of their home and where they live, and their lives are completely in transition right now. So we conducted this call with Hunter Roberts, who's my secretary over the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. We also had Darren Berquist on the call, who is my DOT secretary, Department of Transportation. And then we also had Christy Turman there, who runs my Office of Emergency Management. And she talked through how we were helping and partnering with the county to file a FEMA request to see if this could potentially be covered by FEMA. So we've been offering our guidance to the county as they tackle this challenge in front of them, working with the community members to bring them as much help as possible.
Okay, and then one follow-up. Do you know if it's Larry Fuss, who bought that land, told me that he bought it from the state because they were using that land to mine for the state cement plant in Rapid. Have you been able to confirm if the state is the one who had reclaimed that mine, and if so, will there be any investigation into that reclamation process?
No, the mining that was done by the state at that time was surface mining. It was a completely different operation than what this older mine would have been a part of years and years ago. So the surface mining, when that was conducted, was done with no indication of the mine being there. It also was restored, and there was reclamation that happened on the property before the property was sold again. So the state had no knowledge at any time that this mine was in place, and it's not on our records. There's some indication there's public records at the county level and potentially at the federal level, but the state had no knowledge that this old mine was ever in place.
Okay, got it. So you're saying at the time that there was the surface mining, you were surface mining over the old underground mine?
Yes, and Hunter Roberts could probably answer some more specifics as well, but he indicated that back in 1985 there was some test wells that were drilled to check the area, and that there was at no time one of those wells that had hit a shaft. So even at the time that surface mining was happening or after, was there any indication to the state that there was an old mine there that had been abandoned?
Okay, thank you.
Patrick?
Patrick Kelly, South Dakota Broadcasters. Can you give us an update on ag and some of those perennial questions I asked about USDA livestock inspection, and how's the interim ag secretary doing?
The interim ag secretary is doing well. He's very busy. Larry Roden, the lieutenant governor, is filling in for us and has been doing a great job coordinating communication between our commodity groups, farmers and ranchers and producers, and those facilities that would process a lot of the livestock that need to get moved through the system. I would say that we're exploring what kind of inspections need to happen at different facilities in order for us to sell our meat across state lines. It's a waiver and an executive order that we've asked for from the federal government to allow hogs and cattle that are processed in state inspected facilities to be marketed across state lines so that we could get more of the backlog dealt with that we're seeing in South Dakota. We're also exploring what opportunities we have as a state to set up more facilities that could really help us build on some opportunities to market our specific high quality beef and hogs that we raise here in South Dakota. So I would say all options are on the table, and perhaps this challenge we've had in front of us will show us some new opportunities we can pursue in the future to add some value to our commodities. Was there a question on the phone?
Yeah, Jeremy Siegelberg.
Okay, go ahead, Jeremy, you bet.
Yeah, so North Dakota announced yesterday they're going to be launching a new Care-19 app called Care-19 Exposure that's going to use technology from Apple and Google. And I just wondered if there's been any conversation about South Dakota also launching that for the state.
Jeremy, this is Kim Alsam-Rice, and we have had some calls with Google to better understand how their partnership with the Care-19 app would work, and so we're in those discussions right now. Part of the equation with that is that we have to have enough people enrolled in the Care-19 app for that to be a very effective mechanism. So you can help us plug the Care-19 app and help people understand that and get enrolled in it, because that would make that exposure application much more efficacious.
Okay, thank you.
Governor Noem, this is Chelsea Dickens at News Center 1.
Okay, Chelsea, I'm going to go to a question in the room here real quick, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Covering city council meetings, they're talking about pools opening.
Mm-hmm.
I know Fort Pierre was talking about it. Roxanne Heason, the finance officer, was saying that she's in a group email with 27 different because they're all trying to, who's doing what, what's going on where, how are you going to handle it? Like she said, 9 had said yes, 8, there was 6 that had said no, some undecided, so on and so, like, what guidance, like, with the one thing that I didn't hear come up at all was the topic of CPR. They're like, we've got concessions, we have to watch out for in the pool house, and then, maybe parents cannot use cash and sign up with, with small amount of money on a tab and like all that, but no one mentioned the one, they mentioned lifeguards, but no one talked about the one thing lifeguards might actually have to do, which is, really violate social distance.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody in the community that is making a decision on what kind of activities to have and to hold and what facilities to have open, such as swimming pools, to continue to follow the CDC guidance. We do have all of that decision-making information on the covid.sd.gov website. I've heard about lots of different plans that they've come forward with, limiting the amount of people in the pool at one time, having only private groups, letting people register ahead of time, and then cleaning down the facility on a regular basis. And I do appreciate the fact that each of these facilities looks different. And so that's why it's important that the local officials are making the decisions on if they should operate and how they should be operating. When it comes to CPR, my encouragement would be that if they get into that situation, to save that person's life and worry about the virus later, especially for children, because the virus would make them not feel very well, but the chances of them getting very ill from the virus would be incredibly low. So keep our priorities straight, make sure that we're acting to save someone's life, and then worry about the virus afterwards.
As a quick follow-up, should the community impact map with places that have substantial community-acquired exposures and cases, should places like that maybe be thinking twice about opening? I mean, places like Sioux Falls have already said no, but other, smaller places, is that something that they should take into consideration, maybe?
I think it's a decision for the local officials, especially considering that our identification on the community impact map is countywide. There are many different towns in each of these counties, and some may have seen no virus or positive cases whatsoever. Hey, Chelsea, did you have a question?
Yes, I did, Governor. Going
Sure.
back to the Blackhawk issue and the conference call this morning, wanted to know what your response was to residents who were asking for the state's role and what more can be done.
Well, we will be helping them file that FEMA application. I also indicated to them that if FEMA did make this an appropriate application and they did grant our request, that the state would commit to stepping up and fully fulfilling our 10% share of the cost sharing formula that would need to happen in order for that to be of any assistance to the families. We also are helping them and are going to coordinate getting some contacts with some professional engineering firms that could come in and do an assessment on the mine. And then we don't have that kind of expertise on staff in state government, and we just don't do that type of mining or maintain individuals on staff that have the expertise that's necessary to do that. So we told them we would work with them to make sure we were aggressively finding someone who could give them the kind of assessment and deem that area safe or unsafe as soon as possible.
And a follow-up to that, I understand that you'll be sending out additional resources. Is that in regards to experts that can come in and look at the property?
Well, we don't have resources at the state level, but we are helping them identify. We told them we'd help within our agencies and departments to identify folks that do have that expertise. One of the things I indicated to them was that we have a grant available through South Dakota Housing that they may want to look at. It's a very small grant, but it's utilized in situations like this to help families that are going through some kind of a natural disaster. So these folks could qualify up to $2,500 to help cover costs of renting somewhere else to live for a period of time, covering utility bills, things like that. It's been utilized in the past when someone's been flooded out of their home or been hit by a tornado. Those kind of things have been covered in the past and made people eligible for this grant, and that was something that we would get that information out to these families to see if they would like to take advantage of some monetary resources that could help them through the next several months.
Excellent. Thank you, Governor.
You bet.
Governor, this is Stephen Gross.
Morgan.
Yes, go ahead, Stephen.
I wonder, you said that all tribes that are running checkpoints are being investigated. Does that include the Rosebud Sioux tribe? And could you tell us other tribes that are being investigated with that?
Well, I'm not going to talk about an ongoing investigation, but we are focused on checkpoints that don't fit the 3-point plan that we have proposed to the tribes. That, if you remember, I offered them a path forward on how they could still have checkpoints and what they could do to make sure that was being facilitated in a way that addressed their concerns but was also within their jurisdiction. And that plan was that there would be no tribal checkpoints on U.S. and federal highways, that they could establish checkpoints on BIA roads, and that also that they make reasonable accommodations for getting essential services through those checkpoints, such as delivery of food, energy, medical supplies, and access to private property. So all tribes have been presented that plan, and I'm hopeful they'll consider implementing those type of checkpoints if that is something that they want to do.
I'm wondering, with this, with an increase in checkpoints on federal and state highways, with the escalation of this to the federal level, do you regret issuing an ultimatum last Friday?
No, did you look at all the documents we put on the covid.sd.gov website, Stephen? The easements?
I did.
Yeah. No, I don't. It's very important that we have clarity in this area to make sure that we are upholding the law and we know whose jurisdiction is in each situation that these checkpoints are. And so, no, that's why we're doing due diligence, continuing to have conversations and find workable means to address their concerns and our concerns at the same time. And remember, with every action that we take and that the tribes take, they're setting precedent. So we can't just look at this situation in a virus, in a pandemic. If we allow checkpoints to shut down traffic in this situation, then we are setting precedent for that to happen far into the future in many other situations as well.
With that, as far as setting precedent, I'm wondering why you decided not to take them to court and decided to elevate this to the federal level, to the White House, to BIA.
Well, I would point to my record of working with the tribes. I'd love to see some conversation on that I have over a decade of partnering very well with all of our tribes in the state, that I've been an advocate to getting them better health care and fixing IHS and their inadequacies of healthcare delivery in their communities, that I've worked hard to get them infrastructure funding, get them funding for their criminal justice systems and their law enforcement, that I've worked to do outreach on their drug and meth epidemic that they see in so many of their communities, that I've been a partner in them in addressing violence and missing, murdered, and Indigenous women as well, that I have long been a partner and have many friends that live in these communities, that we work together very well on 99% of issues. There are a couple of issues that we disagree on, and that's why we've been continuing to have these conversations, is that this is something that is incredibly important to me that we have resolved, but we follow a process that will lead to some kind of an agreement that we can do together.
Governor Noem, a follow-up on that comment about precedent. Are you, one of those areas of disagreement is the Keystone XL pipeline, and people have been asking me, they're saying, is this about, ultimately preventing tribes from deciding to block Keystone XL trucks and contractors from coming through? Are you worried about that? Is that part of what you're doing?
Well, I would just remind everybody that this pipeline is not going to cross any tribal land or reservation areas. So that build will be happening in the coming months if things proceed the way that they are. And I've been long dedicated to making sure that it is a peaceful build and that law and order is upheld.
Right, but the vehicles could pass through the reservations on the way to build things like work areas and living areas.
Yes, there could be vehicles that pass through these areas. Yes, that's correct.
And so is part of your reason for wanting clarity, is it because you're afraid that they won't want to block those vehicles?
Well, I would say that would be a great question for the tribes. For us, we want to make sure that the authority to set up those checkpoints, that it's done appropriately, put in the right locations, and they have no authority to set up checkpoints on state and federal highways.
Governor Lee Strubinger, SDPB.
Sure, go ahead, Lee.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit. You had said yesterday that the easements that y'all released yesterday show that the checkpoints cannot lawfully be on U.S. and state highways. I was wondering how you view those easements as playing that role. I had kind of scanned through them a little quickly, and I didn't see anything about checkpoints in them. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the easements fit in that role.
The easements show a proof that the tribe agreed to allowing those highways to go through reservation areas and that it is under the jurisdiction of the state and federal government. And if you'd like more legal descriptions of what those easements mean, in particular in this situation, I can sure have somebody follow up with you.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
I had one more quick question about the
Sure.
investigation, if that's okay.
Sure.
Would it be accurate to describe the state sending investigators to the reservation and these checkpoints to scope things out?
No, I would say it would be accurate to say we wanted to deal with accuracy and facts. That we wanted factual information. We were getting dozens and dozens of phone calls of people complaining about the checkpoints, and we didn't want to operate off of anecdotes. We wanted facts in order to present anything to the federal government that they would potentially act on.
This is Lisa with the Argus Leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, wondering, you list a couple of affidavits and you say there's videos, and just wondering if you can describe a little bit about what's in the videos and affidavits. Is it people actually being stopped and turned around at the checkpoint?
Yeah, I can't do that today. I'm not at liberty to be able to discuss that at this point.
Okay. Have you had any communication with the tribe since your announcement yesterday?
We have ongoing communication with the tribes. In fact, we just completed a very successful mass testing event with the Sisseton Wahpeton tribe. Went very well. Tribal leadership there was grateful for the help of the state in partnering to make sure that their folks were tested for the virus, and so we're continuing to have those conversations with Rosebud, with Yankton, with Lower Brule, Crow Creek. Secretary Flute is in communication with them constantly.
Governor Noem, this is Ariel again. Chairman Fraser told me that he would, he would invite you to come observe a checkpoint with him to see how it works, and that he's open to feedback about how they could be improved. Is that something you have done, or would you be willing to go observe one of those checkpoints?
Oh, I'll certainly visit with Chairman Fraser. I know he's got my cell phone number. I've got his. We'll chat about that and see what the potential is.
Okay.
Governor JP at KORN News Radio.
Sure, go ahead, JP.
Yeah, do you have any updated revenue numbers that you can share with us?
I don't. We have gotten some unemployment numbers that are preliminary, but as far as revenue numbers, not yet. It would be another week or two before we'd be able to assess a full month of impact on our sales tax numbers.
Thank you.
This is Lisa with the Argus Leader.
Sure, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, the unemployment rate for April was released today. I'm just wondering if you have any comment on the 10% unemployment rate.
Well, again, I've used this term before, but it's historic in the very worst way. I think could be record unemployment numbers for the state of South Dakota that we've seen since the Great Depression. And back then, we didn't even record unemployment numbers the way that is done in modern day. So what I would say is it was encouraging to see that we were doing better than the rest of the country, or the country's average unemployment numbers are higher than South Dakota. But still, my focus is on making sure that we can get as back to normal as possible and still protect people and their public health. Any further questions? Okay. Thanks, everybody.